Yes, I am absolutely thrilled that Leesa Aiken has agreed to speak with us today. As Candace mentioned, I'm also a huge fan of the library. Personal shout out to the Lander branch as a part of the Anderson County system, and all that Anderson County libraries offer. But Leesa Aiken is the director of the South Carolina State Library, and she's worked there for 15 years in various capacities. She became the director in 2016 and is focused on creating programs that provide equal access to information for all South Carolinians, and believes that access to information creates opportunities for success. Perfect for a Rotarian. She's a graduate of Columbia College, which is an amazing school in Columbia, South Carolina, and more people really should know about that one. She's active in many organizations in South Carolina and around the country on behalf of libraries and our libraries in South Carolina. I loved this part about her bio. Leesa's fundamental goal is to provide inclusive access, which meets the needs of diverse population in South Carolina. The State Library is committed to developing, supporting, and sustaining a thriving community of learners who make South Carolina stronger through innovation and collaboration. Leesa, we're excited to have you. Now I turn the program over to you. Thank you.
4 years later, we're still trying to find the unmute button, right? Can you all hear me okay? Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. And Julie, I just have to tell you, Julie is so persistent. And Julie, I appreciate you following up with us. I know you've followed up with us many times, which is great, especially during this time of year, because the legislative session is still going on. And we have a couple of provisos that have gone to the conference committee. And so my time is, let's see, I don't know, it's like running constantly. I can't think of a great analogy other than it's just a constant running when the session is still going on into June in particular. So Julie, thank you for following up with us. And a couple things, I do have a PowerPoint, and I'll probably use it as a guide so that I don't forget anything, because we do a lot at the State Library, but mostly I'm just going to talk to you about what we do. And then if you have questions, you can ask me at any time. I have 3 children and I'm from a big family, so I'm used to being interrupted. Feel free to ask me. I'm not great about using the chat and looking in the chat. So I don't know, Julie, if you can maybe keep track of that, or if you all have a process for that, that would be good. Because I'm just not great at keeping track of what's happening in the chat if I am speaking. So a little bit more about, first I want to thank Ken for your background. I see you. Very good. Your background's better than mine is my office. So I love your South Carolina State Library background.
You're welcome.
Yes, I've actually been at the State Library for almost 18 years. I think we probably need to update my bio, but I've been here about 18 years. Prior to that, I was in human resources and finance and administration. So librarianship is a second career. I joined the State Library in more of that role as an operational role. And then I've always loved libraries, but fell in love with the State Library and what we do. The best part of the bio that Julie read, I think, I agree. It is that we provide inclusive services to everyone in South Carolina. I'm from a small rural town, and if I did not have the library or a bookmobile, and the National Geographic, then I certainly would be in a different place in my life. And I remember that. I try to remember that for all of our South Carolinians. And I know the impact that our public libraries in particular have on our rural communities, and the resources, some of those I'm going to talk about with you all today that we provide, have a huge impact, especially on students in South Carolina. I am familiar with the 4-way test of the Rotary, but to be honest with you, it's not something that is in my mind regularly. And so hearing that, I was like, these are my people. Like, this is my life. This is how I live my life. I was raised by my grandparents primarily, and my grandpa was a World War II veteran. And so it makes sense to me that this was established in the 40s with what was happening in the world at the time. And it really is your 4-way code of ethics is how I live my daily life. And so be looking for my membership application too. I don't exactly know what it entails, but I'm hoping that I will pass. And so stay tuned. Hopefully I can get a sponsor or somebody who will vouch for me after this. I don't know. So let's see. I appreciated your shout outs. I just want to say that my last child graduated from high school last Wednesday, and I'm just going to tell everybody I possibly can because it is a huge milestone in all of our lives. And I became a grandma on Valentine's Day. So my son and his wife had my first grandbaby. Yes, she's born on Valentine's Day. Her name is Phoebe, and she is perfect and lovely and just wonderful. So if I can, then I'm going to share, I'm going to start this PowerPoint and share my screen with you. Second. Okay. No. Here we go. Okay, can you see that okay?
Yes, we can see it fine.
Okay, great. So just a very quick vision of the South Carolina State Library. So we develop, support, and sustain a thriving statewide community of learners committed to making South Carolina stronger. Our goal, our mission is to serve the people of South Carolina by supporting state government and libraries to provide opportunities for learning and changing an environment. This is just a neat thing to see sort of the history of the state library. The state library started in 1929 as the South Carolina State Library Board was created. I'm curious to know how many of you thought that it was that old. Yeah, okay. It was actually pretty ahead of its time, especially for the South. And here's some great pictures of through the years. 1943, the General Assembly began funding the South Carolina State Library Board. So we received our first funding. And some great pictures down at the bottom of a bookmobile, the first bookmobile. I love that photo. Sorry. See if we can get back. Nope, instead of forward. Just a second. One second. I think I closed the whole thing, if you can believe that.
Leesa, rest assured that we all have been exactly where you are now. So don't worry about a thing.
Thank you. Here we go. Well, I'm so sorry, but my PowerPoint is not coming up as an option. Yeah, I think it's because I have two screens. Let's see. There we go. All right, can you see that then?
Yes, that's great.
Okay.
Thank you.
A little bit about what, thank you. A little bit about what we do. So we are, we have Discus. I hope you've heard of Discus. Discus is South Carolina's online virtual library, primarily for K through 12. So it's available 24/7. It's essentially, when I was in school, you walked into your library, right? And everything that you needed was in your library. You physically went there if you were in school. Now, we know most of the kids in South Carolina, especially with the work that the legislature's done the last 5 to 10 years, most of them have a one-to-one device. So they have a Chromebook, they have a laptop, they have something. And so their library is online. So we provide, Discus has been around for 25 years now. It's available 24/7. It also has resources in it for teachers, which include lesson plans, quizzes, activities. It's available for it. You can log on right now, or you could just go to our website right now and look up anything. I have 2 graduate degrees. I used both. I used Discus to obtain all of the research I needed to do for both of those graduate degrees. So it's not just K-12. That's just primarily our audience that we that we promote to, but it's 50 different subscription databases. The great thing about Discus is it is like walking into the library and going to your research center. So all of the information is accurate and vetted. We have it arranged by age group and subject. You can sort a variety of different ways. It is completely advertisement free. It is free, but it's also advertisement free. So many times I heard, in fact, just this weekend at my daughter's graduation party, I said, Google is not a research site. It is a search engine. It is not a research site. When somebody says, oh, I got this from Google, that's why it's wrong, because it's not a research site. It's just a search engine. The great thing about Discus is it is both. It is, you can use it as a search to look for what you're trying to research, but it also, it's all accurate, vetted information. It's like having primary sources at your fingertips all the time. We're really proud that the Discus materials can be integrated into learning management systems. If you have any teachers in your lives, please talk to them about Discus. During 2023, just for information, we had over 50 million retrievals out of Discus, which is a 23% increase over the year prior. So we're excited about that. Academic journals, books, there are videos as well. And if you are in South Carolina, you geo-authenticate, which means that it uses your location to determine your IP address, and you don't have to sign in. If you receive your internet through like a satellite company, you will need a password and a sign-on. That's available on our website. So that's the 1%. We worked really hard for that too. It used to be that everyone needed a password, and it's the same password and sign-on for everyone, but that's something we've worked hard on in the last decade or so. So resources that we've added recently are tutor.com. Are any of you familiar with tutor.com? Okay, well, I want to spend a couple of minutes talking about this then. Tutor.com is something that we added during the pandemic. We had been looking at the product. We've been very involved in broadband in South Carolina way before COVID. We worked with our public libraries and ensuring that their download and upload speeds were meeting the needs of their communities. We actually had just finished our last library right before COVID. We had some public libraries who were at a 10 megabytes per second upload speed, which is equivalent to dial-up. This was in 2020, just for informational purposes. And so we were very aware of our inequality to access to information and had been working on that in our communities. So when COVID hit, I had been looking at tutor.com for a couple of years, but I wasn't quite sold on it. I wasn't sure that it was going to be worth the money, to be honest with you. And I'm very fiscally responsible, but when COVID hit, I said, all right, well, let's do a trial of it. We'll just buy some sessions. I think we bought 1,500 sessions. That was in March 15th. I think we started with Tutor March 20th. We used all of those sessions within 30 days. And so then we added more sessions and we worked with teachers. It is one-to-one tutoring for students on, I think it's over 50 topics that and there are different languages. One of the great things about Tutor is an essay drop-off. You can just drop off your essay and have a tutor look over it and provide you feedback and information. That's specifically good for juniors or seniors who are applying for college. But it's one-to-one advice. What we learned from Tutor was that South Carolina children struggle in math. Over 85% of the tutoring sessions that are done in tutor.com focus on math. And it is from elementary math all the way up through calculus, trigonometry. It doesn't matter. Like math is just a struggling point for our kids in South Carolina. And so we learned that within just a couple of months. And we added some other resources then to Discus, like Tumble Math. That's basic elementary math, but you could also use that for a child who's struggling in math, or even special education classes. And we added some additional math resources. Just an aside that I find interesting, the Department of Education last year did a report to the General Assembly saying, hey, looks like math is a problem for kids in South Carolina. And so that would have been 2023. By the time they saw that and said, okay, hey, this looks like it's an issue that we may need to address. One of the wonderful things I love about Discus and about some of these things in particular, like tutor.com, is that it literally was months. And I was like, all right, like all of our sessions, like almost 90% of our sessions are on math. And so, fortunately, we were able to, because of the way that we budget, we had some funding that I had put back, we were able to add additional resources to this. So I tell you that story to say, I don't know how many of you have children, grandchildren, tutor at schools or volunteer at schools or have teachers in your family. If you are aware of something that we are not aware of yet that is needed in the public education, just send me a message, call me, let us know. We want to add resources to this, to Discus. We want it to be an ever-changing resource for people in South Carolina. I think without knowledge, without education, it's very difficult to see yourself in a different place or see how you reach your goals. We also added some additional resources, which I've listed here. We've added more this year even, but World Almanac for Kids for elementary. We've added a drama, which is not on here, a writer's reference center, and World Almanac for Kids intermediate. I put this last bullet, 32 million in cost avoidance. If every school district in South Carolina and every public library purchased all of the subscription databases that we purchased, it would cost about $35 million. We spend around 3 million on all of that and provide statewide access to everybody in South Carolina. This is a really big deal. Like I'm really proud of all the things that we do here, but please use Discus for your own research. I'll tell you one of the things that we just added this year, which is not for K-12, but it is for public libraries, is Chilton. And if you don't know what Chilton is, it is for cars. So it doesn't matter if you have a 1966 Chevy something, you could use the Chilton to find out what's going on with your car, essentially. Like it gives you all of the diagrams, etc. It's very handy for tech schools and for mechanics or just people who do their own maintenance. It's also, though, if you have a 2023 Chevy something, it will give you the same sort of information, but it will tell you your maintenance schedule, for example. And so if you're not sure, how often should you do whatever, you can look up your specific vehicle. That's a big ad for public libraries. It may or may not be of interest to this group, but people using public libraries and working on their own vehicles or their small business owners really have appreciated the addition of that. So we are continuously adding things to the Discus databases. We try to not remove things because we know that our teachers and our students become it is their library. And so they want the same information. Unless it's just not working or it's not being used, then we keep it as part of the offerings that we have. Any questions about our electronic resources? Because I am going to cover, we have a big scope you'll see in a second when I finish, but any questions about this part?
I'll ask, does the tutoring.com, does it provide in-person tutoring or is it like virtual online like Zoom?
Great question. Thank you. It is not like Zoom, but it is online. So there's no face-to-face. It's all writing. There are whiteboards too, or students can upload an assignment if they're having difficulty with it. I'll tell you one of my initial, I'm not so sure about it, being a mother of 3. I'm like, well, how do they vet these tutors? Because that's my curious, and what is the access that they have to children? The vetting process for the tutors is unbelievable. I mean, it really just is, for not just educationally, but from a background check. They also quality control every single session that they do, every single session that a tutor does. So yeah. Candace, did you have a question also? I think you were on mute. You're still on.
Okay.
There.
Ken, I believe you had a question in the chat. How will AI impact learning in the future?
That's a big question.
That's a big one. That's a big.
That probably could take us a while. I have concerns about that, obviously, because, and so I don't know, we're gonna have to wait and see how that develops really and see. I had asked Matt separately because he had mentioned that he uses the 4-way test when he teaches. So I was curious, like, what are you teaching? So I'd asked him separately in a different chat, what subjects are you teaching? My professor friends have said, I know that there's software that's available for teachers to check to make sure that it's original content, but the smarter AI gets, I'm not really sure. I feel clearly very strongly about writing your own information and continuously growing our knowledge base and being lifelong learners. But good question, Ken. I don't know.
I don't want to interrupt very much, but I'm going to just a tiny little bit. Remember, people, that there are two schools of thought on AI. One of them is, oh, the kids are using it to cheat. And that is true. And there are tools out there to prevent that. And I agree 100% that original writing is absolutely necessary. But the flip of that argument is that it's not really AI yet. It's more like super Google. It can cross-reference lots of things at once. And what makes it seem like it's intelligent is that it writes like a typewriter, and that's creepy. And it makes it seem like it's thinking. It's not. It could auto-populate everything all at once if it so chose. And so it's creepier than it needs to be, but it's also the next evolution of search and is an incredibly useful and powerful tool that at the college level, I encourage my kids to use ChatGPT all the time and then turn it into their own. It's a great way to get some information, but remember, it's still fallible and will give you dumb answers. And you really have to understand the material to be able to read the AI generated whatnot. Again, sorry for interrupting. I just it's not just a tool for cheating. It's so much more.
No problem. It's fine. I agree with that, and also, agree with writing original content. I think because some of it can really provide you with essentially the paper, but if there are two different schools of thoughts, and it depends on what you're using for sure. Any other questions about electronic resources department and our Discus offerings?
So Chuck has his hand up. I think,
Okay.
as you said, you possibly can't see us that well with the PowerPoint on. So Chuck, you have a question?
Yeah, thanks, Candace. I just wanted to comment on that and getting back to what Matt said. I've been in conversations multiple times in the past couple of years, and I have some professors who are very adamant that we are still in machine learning and we are not to artificial intelligence yet. And again, that's a very long and possibly painful discussion. But one of the other things that I've learned in the course of my travels and in having to use ChatGPT, as well as I'm starting to become a fan of Microsoft Copilot. You can, even with Google, if you use the advanced search in Google and you know how to ask the question, you can get Google to do a lot more than simply typing in a keyword search. And AI does the same thing. So to what Matt was saying, if you ask ChatGPT, give me 10 company names, go. And then it'll give me 10 company names with no idea what it's supposed to do. And then I can drill down and I can say, wait, I want company names that are referring to animals. And I want company names that have color in their content. And I want company names that refer to geography. So, Leesa, to your point, I mean, I agree. I'm a big fan of original content and I won't use AI to write for me, but it can be a tool to augment your learning. And I think that's one of the things that right now it's getting a bad rap because we're kind of scared of it. And personally, I've been terrified of Skynet since I was 9 years old. and that's where it's going to end up. But it can be a useful tool as long as we learn how to use it like any other tool. Thanks for the time.
Ken, I hope that answered those thoughts, answered your question.
Well, actually, Lisa, this is one of the most fascinating subjects as far as my professional career,
Hmm.
because I'm a retired architect and I did a lot of strategic planning for organizations. And 20 years ago, I was asked to do a strategic planning session for the library science department at Florida Atlantic University.
Mhm.
And they wanted to know where library science was going to be in 20 years. And a lot of people thought that libraries were going to become extinct because everybody would be getting information electronically, or libraries would be simply community meeting places and not places where you could go get books, but go get information.
Yep.
So we haven't arrived at that yet, but I'm still looking at the future, seeing what AI is doing. And for me, I have a learning disability. I have ADD and I have a difficult time reading. So for me, going through school was very difficult. And now I'm reading that AI basically will be able to customize a learning sequence for children K through 12, where they will learn information in half the time that they do now. And when I see kids who are not learning, it drives me crazy of why we can't leverage the kinds of tools that you're talking about. And I'm suggesting that the use of those tools is going to increase more rapidly as time goes on.
I agree with that. I'm actually in a group with several other state librarians, and we're looking at AI and how that is impacting libraries and how those tools can be used. I don't have that as part of my presentation because it's something I'm working on with some colleagues of mine, but I agree with that. I have a child who has dyslexia and dysgraphia, and so I completely understand, and ADHD, and so I completely understand the learning differences that can exist and how it can be used in that way, especially for summaries and just how information is presented. And yeah, so it is exciting. There are opportunities for sure. For Discus, it is just a research site, but I'm interested to see how AI is going to impact libraries too. So I'll keep.
Lisa,
Maybe
as
the
you can
next time
tell,
we
we're
meet-
all passionate about this this topic, and
Yeah, yeah.
I want to make sure we get through your slides because I know that your time is limited. So I think hopefully we'll have some time at the end for more conversation. Let's try to do that.
Oh, yes. Okay, great. And if I, as I go through with my AI group that I'm working with, I'm happy to share that information too with you all at a different date.
Please
All
do.
right.
Love
All
it.
right. I'm going to keep going then. So another thing that we do here at the State Library is library development. So there are 46 counties in South Carolina. We work in all 46 counties. This is just a kind of listing of what do we do in public libraries. So we work on programming. We do a federal grants management program. So we give impact grants. We work on library operations. We provide consultations to children's librarians, library management. Advocacy is a big conversation now. I was in a different meeting before this one talking about the session that's happening right now and how we advocate for public libraries and explain some of the provisos that are in place right now and how this would really impact public libraries. We do public library marketing, relations, EDI training, best practices, and so on. So basically, if it's happening in a public library, then we consult on it here at the State Library. I work with boards, I work with local politicians and local county councils, county administrators, et cetera, in conjunction with the library. So that's our role in public libraries. The other thing that we do, which goes to the sentence that Julie pointed out in my bio, is actually the last bullet point on this slide, which is that we offer kits to public libraries. It started out, gosh, I started here anyway, we've had it going now for about 15 years. And we started with 3 kits, and they were gaming kits, and we now have over 100 kits that we circulate. Those kits can be borrowed by public libraries. We have robotics kits, we have dementia kits, we have puppet kits, we have filmmaking, Lego kits. Essentially, the goal of those kits is to provide access to information and resources that children wouldn't otherwise have necessarily in their public library. So if you're from a small town in particular, from a smaller rural town, you can't afford to buy all of these different kits to then share with your library patrons. We buy those, we buy multiple sets, and then we loan those out to our public libraries. The next thing that I wanted to talk about was Talking Book Services. I don't know if who is familiar with Talking Book Services, but Talking Book Services is a program for people who have a visual difference. They're blind, or have macular degeneration or some other visual difference, or have a learning disability. And so this in particular is something I'm really pleased with. I work a lot on the national level on different things that are important to me, important to the libraries, or that I see that are important to people in South Carolina. And I worked on actually expanding who qualifies for Talking Book Services to children, especially children with learning disabilities, because they are books that are read aloud essentially to you. And so it makes a huge difference in people's lives, people who've lost their vision or who are blind, etc. We take about 1,200 calls a month. I have 4 reader advisors that take that many phone calls a month. We send about 150,000 items out every year. And then we have 60,000 items that people have downloaded additionally from the download system. Again, they're books on, they're actually on oh gosh, what do you call it? A flash drive, but it looks like it's part of a cassette because it really can't get any smaller, and they go into a player. If it gets any smaller, it's easier to lose in a couch cushion. So it's about 2 by 2, I would say. And we mail those out. It's all free, etc. We also host a monthly book club, summer and winter reading programs, and we have an annual art competition for children in school. We also have a recording booth on site, and I put come record with us. We would love to have you. We also have some recording mobile studios, but our recording site is, we primarily focus on South Carolina materials or South Carolina authors. What we record is uploaded then to the Library of Congress. And so you have to be certified to do that. So the quality of which we're recording is uploaded to the Library of Congress. I'm really proud of that part of our program, because I love South Carolina. And so we record primarily South Carolina material. And so it's a way to get South Carolina information out across the United States, because anybody who is in a Talking Book Services, is a Talking Book Services patron, has access to all of those materials. So we've done lots of interesting pilot programs. I'm trying to be mindful of your time, but we've done lots of interesting pilot programs with Talking Book Services. To include, I'll just tell you this one. We're the first state library. Not all state libraries have recording studios. There are about 10 of us. And we did the first children's book where we added sounds to it. In fact, I wasn't sure the Library of Congress was going to accept it, and they weren't sure they were going to accept it either. But I said, well, we're going to do it anyway. I know kids are going to be engaged in it. And if they don't want it, that's fine. We'll just send it out to our kids in South Carolina. And it has taken off like gangbusters. And so it's a lot of fun. We have some sound, like Nana in the City is a book about New York City. And so there are lots of city sounds going. Adults don't really care for that when they're listening to their books, but kids, it is a great way to engage children and make future readers and just keep them reading. So happy to answer any questions, but I'm going to keep going and then we can come to it. We also have Center for the Book, which is a specific program here at our library. This program focused on South Carolina specifically, cultural and historically significant things in South Carolina. We have a literary landmark sites, which is where we've designated sites across South Carolina as being literary, having literary importance. For example, Dr. Benjamin Hayes in Greenwood County, his home is a literary landmark site. We circulate themed books for book clubs to public libraries, and we coordinate. We have about 2,500 to 3,000 kids come to the state library every year for a read-in at the State House, and that's a lot of fun. And it's a way to remind members of the legislature that kids who read succeed. That's the theme. And we encourage them to be really loud on that day. And I say so that they know we're here because they're still in session when we do it. This year we didn't get to have it. We planned it. It's a lot of planning. We didn't get to have it because there was a tropical storm that came, unfortunately. But what was interesting about that too is that we had several members of the legislature contact us and say, hey, can I just have a few minutes to talk? And I'm like, no, that's not political, but we'd love for you to come. It's for the kids. You know, we are talking, we have Cocky come, and it's just a fun day of reading at the State House. Many of the kids come on field trips and they're able to see the State House for the first time, and they have lunch and picnic on the State House grounds. So that's something that we coordinate. But primarily the Center for the Book is we do statewide programming that supports the literary arts and literary projects. This is kind of a, what I would say is my catch-all place to celebrate South Carolina's cultural heritage. We had Queen Quet of the Gullah Geechee come recently and talk about the Gullah Geechee culture. We have several speakers who are lined up in June. We had Carolina Crime Stories. It's really just, it's about South Carolina and preserving South Carolina's rich cultural heritage. We also are a library. We're a traditional library. We don't have many fiction books. The fiction books that we have here are focused on South Carolina only, or they're large print books for our Talking Book Services patrons. But we provide reference, researching, programming, training, and outreach in our library services department. There's access to print and electronic collections. We serve state employees, elected officials, state agencies. We have a good partnership with DHEC and a variety of the South Carolina parks, etc. This is really an important part I want to make sure that you all are aware of, and I think your group probably would be most interested in this. We are the state's document depository for South Carolina. What that means is that we get all of the state documents that are provided by state agencies for the public. That is not done at the archives. Archives has records. And so an example of a record would be Governor McMaster's emails. That's what the archives gets. What we would get from the governor's office would be the governor's memo from the governor or some publication that the governor has put out. So if it is a state document from any state agency across time, our oldest state document is from 1789, then we have it here at the state library. I'm putting a lot of effort into our state documents depository and a lot of funding. Actually, some of my last funding requests have been, the last couple of years have been for digitization of state documents. We are working on digitizing our state documents so that they're available online. If I can, Julie, I'll send, if it's all right with you, and then you can send to the group, I'll send some links out so that you can quickly get to the state documents depository and look at some of the state documents that are online. We also have a notable documents program, which is an awards program. Every year we select 10 to 12 state documents that are very well designed. They have a lot of good information because we see all of the state documents. And then we award them with a notable state document. That's a big deal for state agencies, as you can imagine, and for their employees. It's not a lot of opportunities for state employees to be recognized for the work that they're doing for the public good. And so this is a program that we've done now for about 20 years, maybe 22 years. Time is relevant. And that's something I'm really proud of. We also provide training. And we are a federal documents depository. And so we don't receive all federal documents. We have a collection of federal documents, though, that we do receive here. As you probably know, there are federal document depositories all over the United States, and we receive different parts of the federal collection and house those in our libraries. And that's another part of what we do. Any questions about our state documents or in particular? Let me give you one more piece of information. Many state documents now are what are called born digital documents. So they're not printed. They're no longer printed. We get 15 copies if they are printed here. The state agencies send us 15 copies of those. We send 12 of them out to our depositories across South Carolina. We keep 3 here. But for born digital documents that are never going to be printed, we have web crawlers that go out every night and search each state agency to pull in what might be a document. We started with 1 about 10 years ago. We're up to 5 now because so many documents are just born digital now. And so once we identify those, or once the web crawler identifies those, it pulls it in, and then we have a person who has to go through all of those, and then we load them up to our digital depository. We have people use our digital depository for state documents all across the world. I mean, it's very interesting where our hits come from, state documents. We just finished a big project with DNR for their South Carolina Wildlife Magazine. They just had their 70th anniversary, and we digitized all of those documents. So those are available online. They hold a year back because it is a paid publication. So, but otherwise they're all online. And then this will be the last thing I talk about. We are a member of SE Lens. We're a founding member of SE Lens. I heard Anderson, Lawrence, and I'm not sure what other counties, Greenwood, I think Matt is probably in Greenwood. Those are all SE Lens libraries. And so there are about 20 of us. My goal is to get 46 county libraries. What SE Lens is, it's a consortium, and we share materials with people in those counties. And so there are about 2.6 million, so it's about half of South Carolinians who have access to the collection of 20 libraries. And I can go on about any of those topics. So I'm going to stop because
Well, I did notice
forever.
that Ken has a question in there, and
Okay.
the question is about video versus text learning, and I'm assuming that the context of that is for somebody who's fully capable of utilizing either one of those platforms. What are the pros and cons of using video versus text for learning and engaging with information?
Compare video learning versus text learning. I think that just depends, honestly, Ken. I think it depends on what your style is. Like my child, Levi, who is also the one who made me grandma, he and his wife. You know, for him, who has dyslexia and dysgraphia, he's an auditory learner. And so that's his learning style. And I do have my undergraduate degree is in early care and education and child and family studies, but some people are just auditory learners, regardless of if you have a difference or a disability. So I really do think that depends on learning style. And we try to provide information in a variety of platforms for people. I hope that answers your, I could continue to talk about that offline if you want, but the other thing I want to mention that I made a note and I forgot to tell you, so I didn't forget because it's not on my slideshow, but if we went back to Discus, the electronic resources, one thing I want to make sure that you're aware of is they're testing platforms too. So for children or kids or anybody who wants to go to college, there are PSA tests, practice tests in there, there are SAT practice tests, there are work keys practice tests. Learning Express has, if you're not sure what you want to do with your career, for a career, not just college, but a career, you can take different sort of surveys and then get closer. There's so many options now, especially for young people, on what you can do for a career. It can be very overwhelming. Having put 2 children and another one about through college, it's really overwhelming. And I don't know, it'd be curious to me to know if Matt says this too, and I don't know if any of you, the others of you are professors, but there's just so much information and so much ability that kids can get lost in trying to figure out, well, I don't, what is it? There's so many things that there are resources in Discus that can help anybody, I say kids, but anybody figure out, well, what's the next step? If you're retired and you're trying to figure out, well, what is the next step? Me as getting ready to be kind of a semi-empty nester. I've been raising children for 28 and a half years. It's a different change of mind. I might take it and see what are my interests? What do I want to do next? But anyway, the PSAT, SATs, work keys are all kinds of different tests that are available in there. If you know anybody in school, teachers, etc., please talk about that so that they can. One of the challenges of every library, I think, is PR. Making sure that people know what the library does. I'm assuming that you all know what public libraries do. I mean, public libraries are places where small business owners go, people who don't have access to the internet. I mean, it's just, we do telehealth in public libraries now. That's something I'm working on, securing some funding for additional building space, construction costs for the ways that public libraries are being utilized now. I think, I'm sorry, it might have been Ken, but I could be wrong, who said, the ways in which public libraries have changed it's so dramatic, especially in the last 20 years. I'm going to stop talking about when I first joined the state library. It was about 1985 is really how we were operating. It was 2007, but libraries just had not kept up much with the changing needs. And so we had a big focus on public library development. That's been a focus of mine since I've been here. And helping public libraries meet the needs of their patrons because they are changing. We, in 2007, it was the recession. It's funny to me that I hire people now who are like, what? And I'm like, oh, you weren't really alive, or you were just in middle school. And anyway, during the recession, we were going to be combined with 3 other agencies because the legislature just didn't get what we do. And so PR, we had to really talk about what is it that we do. And now I'm happy to say that I've gotten every budget request that I've asked for in the last 8 or 10 years. So yes, thank you.
Yeah. Julie, I think you had your hand up for a minute. Did you still have a question or comment?
No, in the interest of time, Leesa, I just wanted to thank you. I'll actually just look at your website and find an answer to my question. But thank you so much for being with us today. I've really enjoyed this, even though I knew a little bit about the libraries. I think it's just a tremendous resource in our communities and obviously in our state. So
Thank you.
you.
Can I just say one thing? I promise this will be it. But this is important to me, and specifically for African American people. Cultural heritage and finding genealogical information, if you are a person of color, can be a real challenge, especially in the South, because the documents just don't exist. I'm a history person, so lots of reasons those documents don't exist. Sometimes people were just not documented, or they were lost in fires. I mean, just, if it's past 1860 something. But for people of color specifically, we have worked hard to develop resources or purchase resources for people to be able to do research to find their cultural heritage. You may or may not know, if it was before 1960 and you were a person of color and you passed away, your obituary was not published in South Carolina at all. It was published in one of the 9 Black newspapers up north. And so we purchased a subscription to those 9 newspapers so that we provide that access to that information. I am continuously on the search for documentation that African American people or people of color can use to just access their own history. So I just want to we do webinars on that as well. We do training on that. If you have any interest in genealogy, that's a big interest of mine and of the state library, and providing resources to people to help with doing research on your own persons. So thanks for that.
Leesa, I want to echo Julie and say that I think all of us are just blown away by the scope and quality of what you provide to us, and your passion, obviously, and personal dedication. one of the reasons this is so exciting is even though Rotary has a number of different areas of focus, the two that are most important to this club are the environment, but also literacy.
Mhm.
So we do something for our speakers every week. Two of our members will select books that are particular to the topic, and this one was selected specifically for you, and it's called Library Lion, and in honor by Michelle Hudson, and it's in honor of you, and it tells the story of a lion's visit to the library, and it weaves together themes of friendship, courage, and the power of libraries. And so this will go into one of the little free libraries in the upstate of South Carolina.
Wonderful.
I
Thank you so
say
much.
that sorry?
I just thank you so much.
Oh, sure. And I do want to say that as I was struggling with algebra in high school and a whole year of calculus in college, I really, really wish I had had tutor.com. It would have been a much more pleasant experience. But thank you so very much for your time. This is an ongoing conversation, and I'm really confident that we would love to have you back to talk about a whole range of topics. But since it is a little over 1 o'clock and it's pumpkin time, we're going to do the next thing, which is recite the four-way test together. So if you're on mute, please unmute yourselves and recite with me the Rotary four-way test of the things we think, say, or do. First, is it the truth? Second,
Is it
is
fair,
it
fair
to
to
all
all
concerned? Third, will it
Will it build
goodwill and
better
better
And
friendships?
fourth,
Will it be beneficial to all concerned?
all right.
Is it fun?
Thank
Is it
you all
fun?
very, very much. Just really an amazing program, and just makes me feel really good about being in South Carolina and knowing that you're taking good care of us. So thank you. Everybody have a wonderful afternoon.
Thank you.